Otto, our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab. We'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Quiet Life. Roderick Haney's hands were deep in the soil when the mockingbird started its afternoon song. He wiped his brow with a dirt-stained forearm, surveying the rose garden he'd spent the last 3 months cultivating. The estate's grounds stretched before him, 2 acres of meticulously maintained paradise that had become his entire world. 5 years ago, he'd been someone else entirely. Rod, the sprinklers are acting up again. Mrs. Henderson from next door called over the fence. She was 73 and treated him like the help, which suited him fine. I'll take a look after I finish here, Mrs. Henderson. He'd chosen this life deliberately. After 20 years in the CIA's Special Activities Division, after 43 confirmed kills and operations in 17 countries, after watching friends die and making impossible choices in the dark corners of the world, he'd wanted peace. He wanted normal. Natasha had seemed like the perfect choice. Beautiful, sophisticated, a real estate agent with a bright smile and dreams of suburban comfort. They'd met at a garden center. How perfectly mundane. She'd been buying orchids for a client's showing. He'd been there for mulch. Their courtship had been quick. 6 months later, they were married. She knew him as Rod Haney, former Army logistics specialist turned landscaper. The cover story came easily after years of practice. The military records were real enough, scrubbed of anything classified. To anyone checking, he was exactly what he claimed to be, a man who'd serve his country in a boring capacity and found his calling in horticulture. He'd even convinced himself it was true most days. The house they'd bought together sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in suburban Virginia. Natasha had pushed for something bigger, flashier, but his disability pension and her real estate income placed limits. She'd been disappointed, but accepted it. Or so he'd thought. Roderick stood, his knees protesting slightly. He was 48 now, and while he maintained his fitness rigorously, old habits died hard. He'd let himself soften around the edges. The slight paunch, the silvering hair, the reading glasses he actually needed now. He looked every bit the aging gardener his neighbors saw. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant orange streaks, he gathered his tools. The shed at the back of their property was his sanctuary. Inside, behind the lawn mowers and bags of fertilizer, behind a false wall he'd constructed during a weekend when Natasha was at a conference, was a different collection. His go bag, untouched weapons cleaned and maintained monthly, cash, 3 passports with different names, and encrypted communication devices. He hadn't touched any of it in 4 years. The insurance policy Natasha had pushed him to increase last year now seemed prescient. $3 million, far more than a gardener would normally carry. He'd explained it as a benefit from his military service, special coverage for disabled veterans. She'd been thrilled. Walking back to the house, Roderick noticed Lance Cowan's Mercedes parked across the street. Lance lived 3 houses down, a commercial real estate developer who'd made his fortune flipping properties during the recession. 42, perpetually tanned, and dripping with the kind of arrogance that came from inherited wealth. He and Natasha had become friendly over the past year, both working in real estate. Too friendly, if the neighborhood gossip was accurate. Roderick had noticed, but said nothing. He'd learned long ago that patience revealed more than confrontation. Inside, Natasha was on her laptop at the kitchen table, barely acknowledging his entrance. Her auburn hair was pulled back, designer glasses perched on her nose. She'd grown colder over the past year, more distant. The woman he'd married seemed to have evaporated, replaced by someone perpetually dissatisfied. "Dinner?" he asked. "I ate already. There's leftover chicken in the fridge." She didn't look up. He nodded, moving to wash his hands. In the reflection of the kitchen window, he watched her. She was tense, her fingers drumming against the table, a tell he'd learned to recognize. She was planning something. Later, after a quiet meal alone and a shower, Roderick lay in bed reading while Natasha typed furiously on her phone beside him. The distance between them on the king-sized mattress felt like a continent. "I'm going to that conference in Richmond next weekend," she announced. "The real estate expo?" "Yes." I'll be gone Friday through Sunday. All right. She turned off her lamp and rolled away from him. Within minutes, her breathing had evened into sleep. Roderick stayed awake longer, staring at the ceiling. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones, that old instinct that had kept him alive in Kandahar, in Damascus, in Moscow. The same sixth sense that had saved his life more times than he could count. But this time, the threat was in his own home. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. The Richmond conference came and went. Natasha returned Sunday evening with expensive shopping bags and barely a word about the actual event. Roderick noted the new perfume, the silk blouse that cost more than their monthly grocery budget, the way she immediately disappeared into the bathroom for an hour. Tuesday morning, he found a receipt in the trash. The Royal Windsor Hotel, but not in Richmond. In D.C., 50 miles in the opposite direction. Same weekend. He said nothing. Eugene Navarro called that afternoon. Roderick's former handler had become something of a friend in retirement, both of them trying to adjust to civilian life. Eugene had moved to Florida, started a security consulting firm, and called occasionally to check in. How's the domestic life, Rod? Quiet, Roderick said, standing in his shed with the door closed. You? Bored as hell. I'm thinking about writing a book. One of those fictionalized memoir things. They'd never let you publish it. Eugene laughed. Probably not. Listen, I got a weird call last week. Someone was asking about you. Roderick's grip tightened on the phone. Who? Guy named Terrence Lyon. Ring any bells? The name hit like a physical blow. Terrence Lyon, former Delta, turned private contractor, turned mercenary. They'd crossed paths in Syria 8 years ago. Lyon had been working for a PMC that got too close to a CIA operation. Roderick had been ordered to shut it down. 3 of Lyon's team had died in the resulting firefight. Lyon had survived, but carried a grudge. Yeah, Roderick said quietly. I know him. He was fishing. Wanted to know where you'd settled, what you were doing now. I told him nothing, but he's resourceful. If he's looking, Rod. I know. Watch yourself. After Eugene hung up, Roderick stood motionless in the shed for a long moment. Then he moved to the false wall and retrieved his weapons. The Sig Sauer P226 fit his hand like an old friend. He checked the magazine, the action, the sight alignment. Muscle memory. Why would Terrence Lyon be looking for him now, after all these years? The answer came 3 nights later at 3 a.m. Roderick had developed insomnia over the past month, another old habit from operational days. Light sleep, always listening. He'd been dozing in bed when Natasha's phone buzzed. She grabbed it quickly, sliding out of bed and padding to the bathroom. He waited 30 seconds, then rose silently, moving to the hallway. Through the crack in a bathroom door, he could see her pacing, phone pressed her ear. Her voice was low but urgent. Can't wait any longer, Lance. I'm suffocating here. Lance. Confirmation. I don't care what it costs, she continued. We've already transferred the money, haven't we? Your man said he was the best. Roderick's blood went cold. He's just a broken old gardener, Natasha hissed, and the venom in her voice was startling. Send your assassin at dawn. Make it a bloody massacre. I want it to look like a robbery gone wrong. The insurance pays out either way, and we'll be free. His wife had just ordered his execution. Roderick moved back to the bedroom with the silence he'd honed over 20 years of night operations. He climbed back into bed, pulled the covers up, and closed his eyes while his mind raced. Lance Cowan had hired Terrence Lyon. It made sense. Lyon worked for money now, and Lance had plenty. They'd kill Roderick, stage it as a home invasion, and Natasha would collect $3 million. She and Lance would live happily ever after on his life insurance and his blood. How long had they been planning this? Months, probably, since she'd pushed for the increased coverage. A cold fury settled into Roderick's chest, the kind he hadn't felt in years. Not the hot rage of a betrayed husband. He'd already grieved that marriage in his heart, but the calculated, ice-cold anger of an operator who'd just identified his targets. Natasha slipped back into bed an hour later. Her breathing quickly evened out, the sleep of someone without a conscience. Roderick stared at the ceiling until dawn painted the windows gray. At sunrise, he was in his shed, fully armed, when the breach alarm he'd installed on the perimeter fence hidden among the garden sensors Natasha thought monitored soil moisture, pinged his phone. Someone had just entered his property. Their worst nightmare had begun. Chapter 3, Dawn's Reckoning. Through the shed's small window, Roderick watched Terrence Lyon move across his lawn with professional efficiency. The man had aged, more gray in his beard, a harder edge to his movements, but Roderick would recognize that gait anywhere. Lyon carried a suppressed Glock 19, tactical gear under a dark jacket, moving with the confidence of someone who thought he was hunting civilian prey. He had no idea he'd just walked into a kill box. Roderick had spent the hours since 3 a.m. preparing. Not elaborate traps, he didn't need them. Just strategic positioning, angles of fire, and the cold mathematics of violence he'd mastered over 2 decades. Lyon approached the house, checking windows. He'd come in through the back, expecting the old gardener to be asleep in bed. Standard home invasion protocol. Quick, quiet, 2 to the head, stage the robbery, leave. Roderick moved. He came out of the shed side door, approaching from Lyon's blind spot. His Sig Sauer was steady in his grip, and when he spoke, his voice carried the flat command of someone who'd given orders in combat zones. Terrence. Lyon spun, bringing his weapon up, but Roderick already had the drop on him. Don't, Roderick said calmly. We both know how this ends if you try. Recognition flooded Lyon's face, followed by confusion, then calculation. His weapon stayed raised, but didn't fire. Haney? But you're just a gardener. Roderick smiled without warmth. Is that what they told you? Broke old bastard who tends lawns. Lyon's eyes narrowed. But you're not, are you? Put the weapon down, Terrence. We're going to talk. The hell we are. But Lyon's gun lowered slightly. He was reassessing, and Roderick could see the gears turning. You're the ghost from Syria. The one who killed my team. Following orders. Same as you were. My orders now are to put you in the ground. Lance Cowan's orders, Roderick corrected. How much did he pay you? Enough. Not nearly enough. I guarantee it. Roderick stepped closer, his weapon never wavering. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about this contract. Every detail. Then you're going to walk away and disappear. Because if you don't, Terrence, we're both going to end up doing things we'd rather avoid. You threatening me? I'm offering you a way out. Take it. For a long moment, they stood in the gray morning light, 2 predators evaluating each other. Finally, Lyon lowered his weapon completely. Cowan hired me 3 weeks ago. $50,000, half up front. Said his girlfriend's husband needed to disappear. Showed me photos of some sad old guy in a garden. Easy money. He paused. Except you're not that guy. I'm that guy, Roderick said. I'm just also someone else. The wife's in on it. She made the call last night. Told Lance to send his assassin at dawn. Lyon actually smiled at that. Well, shit. That's cold. What was the plan after? Make it look like a robbery. Cowan's got connections that'll keep the investigation shallow. Rich guy donates to the police commissioner's campaign. Of course he does. Roderick lowered his weapon slightly. Here's my counteroffer. You keep the $25,000 you already got. You send Cowan a photo of my body from a distance. Then you disappear for a month. When you resurface, you tell him I fought back. Things went wrong. You barely escaped. By then, what I'm planning will be done. What are you planning? Better if you don't know. Lyon studied him. You're going after them. Wouldn't you? A laugh, sharp and bitter. Yeah, I would. He holstered his weapon. You know, I spent 8 years hating you for Syria. But those guys I lost, they knew the risks. Same as me. Same as you. This thing with Cowan and your wife, that's different. That's personal. Yes, it is. Send me the photo angle you want. I'll make it convincing. Lyon started backing away. Haney? Whatever you're planning, make it hurt. Count on it. Lyon disappeared over the fence the same way he'd entered. Roderick stood in his garden as the sun fully rose, painting everything gold. Inside the house, Natasha would still be sleeping, dreaming of her freedom and her money. She had no idea she was already dead. Not literally. Roderick didn't plan to kill her. But the life she'd envisioned, the future with Lance Cowan, the money, the freedom, he was about to systematically destroy every piece of it. He pulled out his phone and called Eugene. I need a favor, he said when his former handler answered. A big one. Name it. I need deep background on 2 people. Everything. Financial records, communications, associates, secrets. And I need it fast. Ooh, Natasha Haney and Lance Cowan. A pause. Rod, what's going on? They tried to have me killed this morning. Jesus Christ. Can you help or not? Give me 48 hours. I'll send everything through the encrypted channel. Roderick hung up and walked to his shed. He had work to do. The transformation from broken gardener to operational asset had already begun in his mind. Plans formed and reformed, strategies calculated, contingencies prepared. He staged the scene carefully. Blood packs from a theatrical supply company he'd once used for an undercover operation, strategic spatters, his torn shirt, disturbed earth. He took photos from multiple angles, sent the best one to Lyon's burner number. Then he texted Natasha from a disposable phone. It's done. Cleaning up. Stay put. Don't contact me. She'd think it was Lyon. She'd show Lance. They'd celebrate quietly, then wait for the police to come knocking. But the police wouldn't come, because Roderick Haney wasn't dead. He was just getting started. Chapter 4. The Ghost Protocol. Roderick spent the day in a storage unit he'd rented under a false name 5 years ago, part of his contingency planning that Natasha knew nothing about. Inside were resources from his old life, cash, documents, equipment, and a laptop with software that could crack into systems the CIA had taught him to exploit. Eugene's data dump arrived in 36 hours instead of 48. What Roderick found made his blood boil. Lance Cowan wasn't just a successful developer. He was a sophisticated criminal. The real estate was a front for money laundering operations connected to the Ochoa crime family. Eduardo Ochoa, specifically, ran illegal gambling and loan sharking throughout Virginia. Lance cleaned the money through property flips, inflating values, using shell corporations. And Natasha? She'd been helping him for 2 years. Her real estate license gave her access to property records, title companies, and legitimate banking channels. She'd been complicit in washing over $4 million through fraudulent sales. They'd met at an industry event 3 years ago. The affair had started within months. The plan to kill Roderick and take his insurance money was just icing on their criminal cake. Eugene had included phone records. Dozens of calls between Natasha and Lance, but also between Lance and someone named Christina Cook, Lance's lawyer and apparently his cousin. She'd helped structure the shell corporations, the false property transfers. And there were text messages Eugene had intercepted. Lance to Natasha 2 months ago. Once the old man's gone, we could be together openly. Maybe even get married, if you want that conventional bullshit. Natasha's response: I want the money more than a ring. But we'll see. Roderick sat back in the storage unit's folding chair, staring at the screen. He'd actually loved this woman once. Trusted her. Built a life with her. She'd seen him as nothing more than a paycheck to be collected. His phone rang. Eugene again. You see it all? His former handler asked. Yeah. The Ochoa connection complicates things. Eduardo Ochoa is dangerous, Rod. He's not flashy like other mob guys, but he's smart and ruthless. If Lance is working for him, then Lance is protected. Local cops won't touch him. FBI might, but they need airtight evidence. What are you thinking? Roderick smiled grimly. I'm thinking I'm going to give the FBI that evidence. But first, I'm going to make them panic. He hung up and began working. First, he created a digital ghost, someone who was looking into Lance's business dealings, flagging irregularities, asking dangerous questions. He used techniques from psychological operations. Make them paranoid, make them sloppy, make them turn on each other. Anonymous tips to competitors. Friendly warnings to Lance's business partners that someone was investigating. Cryptic messages that suggested law enforcement interest. Within 3 days, Lance's phone records showed a spike in panic calls. Roderick also began physical surveillance. He'd rented a car under a false ID, changed his appearance with theater supplies, colored contacts, altered his posture, aged himself differently. He looked like a different person entirely. He watched Lance's office, watched him meet with Eduardo Ochoa at a restaurant in Arlington, watched him return home to his McMansion where Natasha and now spent most nights, no longer even pretending to maintain their marriage home. She thought he was dead in a morgue somewhere, his body yet to be discovered. On day 5, Roderick made his first direct move. Lance received a package at his office. No return address, delivered by courier. Inside was a burner phone and a note. I have everything. The properties, the money, the bodies. Call me at noon, or I call the FBI. Roderick watched through a telephoto lens from across the street as Lance opened the package. Saw his face go white. Saw him immediately call Natasha, then Christina Cook, then Eduardo Ochoa. At noon exactly, the burner phone rang. Who the hell is this? Lance demanded. Someone who knows what you did, Roderick said, his voice distorted through a modulator. Someone who knows about the Palmetto Heights development. 8 fake sales, 2.3 million laundered. The Riverside Apartments, 6 shell buyers, all traced back to Ochoa money. What do you want? I want to watch you squirm. I want you to know that your world is about to end. You're bluffing. You don't have shit. Don't I? Roderick rattled off bank account numbers, property addresses, names of criminals involved. Information only someone with deep access could know. I have everything, Lance. And in 72 hours, unless you do exactly what I say, all of it goes to the FBI field office in D.C., along with evidence of murder conspiracy. Murder? What the hell are you? Roderick Haney. You hired Terrence Lyon to kill him. I have the payment records, the communications, everything. Silence. Then, quietly, what do you want? Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., you and Natasha Haney are going to meet me at the old Riverside property. The one that's scheduled for demolition. Come alone. Come unarmed. And maybe, I'll consider letting you buy your way out of this. How much? Everything you have. Every dollar you've stolen, laundered, hidden. You're going to transfer it all to accounts I specify. And then you're going to disappear. Eduardo will kill me. Then you'd better hope I don't give him a reason to look for you. Roderick hung up. Phase 1 complete. He'd isolated his targets, made them desperate, forced them into a meeting on his terms. Now came the harder part, making sure they faced real consequences. Because he wasn't actually going to blackmail them for money. The money meant nothing. He was going to destroy them completely. Chapter 5. The Riverside Trap. The Riverside property sat on 4 acres of contaminated industrial land Lance had bought for pennies. He'd planned to clean it superficially, build cheap apartments, and sell them to low-income tenants who wouldn't know they were living on toxic ground. Another of his crimes Eugene's research had uncovered. The main warehouse was scheduled for demolition in 2 weeks. Perfect. Roderick spent all of the next day preparing. He knew Lance wouldn't come alone. Not really. He'd bring backup, probably someone from the Ochoa organization. And Natasha would be calculating her own angle, seeing if there was a way to profit from this disaster. Let them come. He rigged the warehouse with surveillance cameras, audio pickups, and strategic lighting. Not traps. He didn't plan to kill anyone here. But he needed evidence. Everything that was about to happen would be recorded in pristine quality. At 7:45 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up. Lance and Natasha. They sat in the car for 10 minutes, arguing. Roderick could see through his night vision optics. Finally, they emerged. Behind them, a second vehicle, a Cadillac Escalade. 2 men got out. Muscle. One of them Roderick recognized from Eugene's files. Gustavo Holloway, one of Eduardo Ochoa's enforcers. So Lance had told Eduardo. Interesting. Roderick activated the warehouse lights remotely. The interior blazed to life, dramatic and stark. He positioned speakers throughout the space. Come inside, his modulated voice boomed. All of you, leave the weapons in the vehicles. Like hell, Gustavo called out. Then the FBI gets everything in 10 minutes. Your choice. Lance and Gustavo argued. Finally, they disarmed, though Roderick assumed they'd kept backup pieces. It's what he would have done. The 4 of them entered the warehouse cautiously. Natasha looked terrified, her designer outfit incongruous against the industrial decay. Lance tried to project confidence, but failed. The 2 enforcers scanned for threats. Where are you? Lance called out. Show yourself. Not yet. Roderick's voice echoed. First, we're going to have a conversation about consequences. We agreed to pay, Natasha said, her voice shaking. Whatever you want, we'll give you. I don't want your money, Natasha. I want you to understand what you've done. Who the hell are you? Someone your husband used to be. Confusion rippled across their faces. Then Roderick stepped out of the shadows, his appearance still altered, but his voice now clear and unmistakable. "Hello, Natasha." Her face went ghost white. "Rod? But you're supposed to be dead." He smiled coldly. "Your assassin wasn't as competent as you hoped." Lance grabbed Natasha's arm. "What the hell is this?" "This," Roderick said, "is where your plan falls apart." He gestured around the warehouse. "Every word you're saying is being recorded. Video and audio. High definition. Everything." Gustavo moved forward, but Roderick held up a hand. "I wouldn't. Because while you've been standing here, your employer, Eduardo Ochoa, has been receiving an interesting package. Photos of Lance and Natasha together. Financial records showing Lance skimming from the laundering operation. Evidence that he's been stealing from the family." Lance's face went from tan to gray. "You're lying." "Am I?" Roderick pulled out his phone, showing a photo he'd taken an hour ago. Eduardo opening a manila envelope, his expression darkening. "You've got maybe 30 minutes before he starts making calls." "You son of a bitch," Lance breathed. "Says the man who tried to have me killed." Natasha lunged forward. "Rod, please, I can explain." "Don't." His voice cut like glass. "Don't insult me further. You wanted me dead. You called me a broken old gardener and ordered a bloody massacre. I heard every word." She stumbled back, tears starting. Crocodile tears. "Here's what's going to happen," Roderick continued, addressing all of them. "In about 20 minutes, FBI agents are going to raid Lance's office and his home. They have warrants. I sent them enough evidence to satisfy a federal judge. They'll find more than enough to prosecute for money laundering, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder." "You can't prove murder," Lance spat. "Can't I? I have the payment to Terrence Lyon. I have your communications with Natasha. I have Lyon's testimony. He's already cooperating with the FBI in exchange for immunity." That was a lie, but they didn't know that. "And Eduardo," Roderick turned to Gustavo. "He now thinks Lance has been stealing from him. Which, by the way, is true. I found 3 accounts Lance kept hidden. About $800,000 skimmed over 2 years." Gustavo's expression hardened. He looked at Lance with new eyes. "So here's your choice," Roderick said. "You can run. Try to hide from both the FBI and the Ochoa family. Good luck with that. Or you can turn yourselves in, cooperate with federal prosecutors, and hope witness protection saves you." "There's a third option," Gustavo said quietly, his hand moving inside his jacket. "Is there?" Roderick's demeanor shifted, the operational coldness settling over him like a familiar coat. "Gustavo Holloway, former Marine, dishonorable discharge for black market activities in Iraq. You've killed 4 people for Eduardo that the police know about. I've sent evidence of all 4 to the FBI along with everything else. You pull that weapon, and this warehouse becomes your tomb. Police are already staging 3 blocks away." The bluff worked. Gustavo's hand stopped. "This is over," Roderick said. "All of it. Your crimes, your schemes, your life as you knew it. You wanted to kill an old gardener for insurance money. Instead, you tried to kill a man who spent 20 years dismantling criminal operations for the Central Intelligence Agency." Natasha sank to her knees. "Oh God, God's got nothing to do with this," Roderick said. "This is justice. Cold, calculated, and complete." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "The FBI will be here in 3 minutes, Roderick said. "You can try to run, but I've got surveillance on all exits. You can try to fight, but that ends with you in body bags. Or you can stand there and accept that you've lost." Lance's phone rang. He looked at the screen, his hand shaking. "It's Eduardo." "Don't answer," Gustavo said quietly. "We need to leave. Now." "Too late," Roderick said. The warehouse doors burst open. FBI agents in tactical gear flooded in, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. Roderick had already melted back into the shadows, exiting through a pre-planned route. He'd never officially been there. The recordings would show Lance, Natasha, and Gustavo at a suspicious meeting at a criminal property. Combined with the evidence packages, it was more than enough. By the time the agents secured the scene, Roderick was 3 blocks away, watching through binoculars as Lance, Natasha, and the 2 enforcers were cuffed and loaded into vehicles. Phase 2 complete. But he wasn't done yet. Chapter 6. Dismantling the Empire. The arrests made the morning news. Local coverage showed Lance Cowan and 4 others. They'd grabbed his lawyer cousin Christina Cook at her home, being let out in handcuffs. Federal money laundering charges, conspiracy to commit murder. Natasha's name was mentioned, but her photo withheld pending arraignment. Roderick watched from a coffee shop, anonymous in his altered appearance. Eugene called. I saw the news. Hell of a move, Rod. It's not finished. What else is there? You got them all. Eduardo Ochoa is still out there. He'll lawyer up, distance himself from Lance. He's done this before. Let the small fish take the fall while he swims free. So what's your play? I'm going to make him an offer. That afternoon, Roderick arranged a meeting. Not directly. Eduardo wouldn't meet a stranger, but through channels, using old CIA contacts who dealt with organized crime, he sent a message. I have information Eduardo needs. About who really betrayed him. The response came within hours. A time and place. Neutral ground, a restaurant Eduardo owned. Enough of his men present to feel safe, but public enough that violence would be stupid. Roderick arrived 20 minutes early, scoped the location, identified all of Eduardo's security. 6 men, all armed, try to look casual. Eduardo himself sat at a corner booth. A man in his mid-50s with silver hair and the cold eyes of someone who'd built an empire on other people's suffering. Roderick approached the booth. 2 men moved to intercept, but Eduardo waved them off. You have 5 minutes, Eduardo said. Then my patience expires. Roderick sat. Lance Cowan didn't betray you alone. He had help. The lawyer. His cousin. I know. Not her. Someone else. Someone who's been stealing from you longer than Lance. Eduardo's eyes narrowed. Explain. Roderick slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial records, real ones Eugene had helped compile. They showed a pattern of theft stretching back 5 years from multiple people in Eduardo's organization. Hundreds of thousands of dollars skimmed through various schemes. But Roderick had altered them slightly, added entries that pointed to Gustavo Holloway as the mastermind. It was the one truly criminal thing Roderick was doing, framing someone. But Gustavo was a killer who'd escaped justice multiple times. He'd earned this. Gustavo, Eduardo breathed. He's been with me for 8 years, and stealing from you for most of them. Lance was his partner. They planned to take you down eventually, set you up for federal charges while they disappeared with your money. How did you get this? Does it matter? You wanted to know who betrayed you. Now you know. Eduardo studied the documents for a long moment. Then he looked up. Who are you? Someone who doesn't like people who try to kill him. Lance and the woman, Natasha, they hired an assassin to murder me. I'm just making sure everyone involved pays. Revenge. Justice, Roderick corrected. There's a difference. Eduardo smiled thinly. Not much of one. Maybe not. But here's the thing. I've given the FBI enough to put Lance and Natasha away for 20 years. Your organization isn't touched. I made sure the evidence pointed only at them. You stay free, stay operational. In exchange for what? Nothing. I don't want your money. I don't want to work for you. I just want you to know that Gustavo betrayed you. What you do with that information is your business. Eduardo leaned back. You're either very brave or very stupid. I'm someone you don't want as an enemy. I'm also someone who could be useful to you. I've made sure your name stays out of federal indictments. Consider us even. Roderick stood and walked out. Eduardo didn't stop him. 3 days later, Gustavo Holloway disappeared. His body was found 2 weeks after that in a wooded area outside Richmond. The police called it a mob hit, which it was. No investigation would follow. These things happened in that world. Roderick felt nothing about it. Gustavo had killed 4 innocent people. He'd have killed more. This was simply closing a ledger. The federal case against Lance and Natasha moved forward with brutal efficiency. Their lawyers tried to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. Lance's cousin Christina flipped first, testifying about the money laundering operation. Then Lance followed, trying to reduce his sentence. But the murder conspiracy charge stuck. Natasha had actually called Lance asking about the hit. She transferred money herself. There was no walking back from that. Roderick attended the arraignment wearing his disguise. He watched Natasha in her orange jumpsuit, looking small and broken. For a moment, just a moment, he felt something like pity. Then he remembered her voice. He's just a broken old gardener. Make it a bloody massacre. The pity evaporated. Chapter 7. The Prosecution. The trial began in late spring, 6 months after the arrests. Roderick had stayed ghost during the investigation, feeding information to the FBI through anonymous channels, never appearing himself. The prosecution built their case methodically. Financial crimes were straightforward. The money trail was clear. But the attempted murder charge required more finesse. They called Terrence Lyon as a witness. The mercenary had indeed cut a deal, testifying in exchange for immunity. He'd been easy to flip once Roderick had maneuvered things correctly. Eugene had made sure Lyon understood that cooperation was his only path forward. Lyon took the stand in late May. "Mr. Lyon," the prosecutor asked, "who hired you to kill Roderick Haney?" "Lance Cowan. He approached me through an intermediary. Said his girlfriend's husband needed to disappear." "And what were the specifics of his contract?" "Make it look like a home invasion. Kill Haney, stage a robbery. $50,000. Half up front." "Did Mr. Cowan specify how he wanted Mr. Haney killed?" "He said his girlfriend wanted it to be brutal. A bloody massacre was the phrase she used." Natasha flinched in her seat. Her lawyer objected, but the damage was done. "What happened when you attempted to fulfill this contract?" "I encountered Roderick Haney at his home, but he wasn't who I expected. He's former CIA, highly trained. He disarmed me and convinced me to cooperate with authorities instead." Lance's lawyer stood. "Objection. This witness has every reason to lie to save himself." Sustained. "The jury will disregard speculation about Mr. Haney's background." But the seed was planted. Roderick smiled from the gallery. The defense tried to argue that no actual murder had occurred, that it was conspiracy at most. But the financial transfers, the communications, Natasha's recorded phone call to Lance, obtained through warrants after the arrest, all painted a clear picture. When Natasha took the stand in her own defense, the prosecutor destroyed her. "Mrs. Haney, when did you first discuss killing your husband?" We never actually meant to. You transferred $10,000 to an account linked to Terrence Lyon. Lance said it was for something else. You called Lance Cowan at 3 a.m. on the night before the planned murder. You told him to send his assassin at dawn. What did you mean by that? I was upset. I didn't mean. You called your husband a broken old gardener and said you wanted a bloody massacre. Those were your exact words. Natasha broke down crying. I never thought it would actually happen. But you wanted it to happen. You wanted your husband dead for his insurance money. No, $3 million, Mrs. Haney. That's what you and Mr. Cowan stood to gain. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Lance Cowan, 25 years federal prison. Natasha Haney, 18 years federal prison. Christina Cook, 10 years for conspiracy and money laundering. The sentences were read in early summer. Roderick sat in the back of the courtroom, watching Natasha's face as the judge spoke. She looked older now, the glamour stripped away. When she was let out, she scanned the gallery one last time. Their eyes met. Recognition flickered. She knew he was there, watching. Knew he'd orchestrated everything. He smiled slightly. Not cruel, just satisfied. Then she was gone. Chapter 8. Loose Ends. Roderick spent the next month systematically erasing his presence from the case. The FBI agents who'd worked it never met him. All tips had been anonymous. Eugene had covered his tracks. Terrence Lyon was the only one who knew the truth, and he'd disappeared to the South Pacific after his testimony, $50,000 richer. The house he'd shared with Natasha sold quickly. He didn't need the money, but he wanted the physical reminder gone. He kept nothing from their marriage, donated her belongings, burned the photos, wiped the slate clean. Eugene flew up from Florida for a weekend. They drank beer in Roderick's new apartment, a small place in Maryland, anonymous and forgettable. You did a hell of a thing, Eugene said. Brought down a criminal operation, put away murderers, and never officially existed in the whole process. It was never about credit. What was it about then? Roderick considered. Justice. They thought they could take everything from me because I seemed weak, because I'd chosen to be nobody. I needed them to understand that nobody is sometimes the most dangerous thing you can be. You think she gets it now? Natasha, she will. 18 years is a long time to think about your choices. You could have killed them all. Lance, Natasha, Gustavo. Made it look like mob violence. I could have, Roderick agreed. But that wouldn't have been justice. That would have been murder. This way, they're alive to face what they did. Every day in prison, they'll remember that they tried to kill a broken old gardener, and he destroyed their entire world. Eugene raised his beer. To broken old gardeners. Roderick clinked bottles with him. To justice. A week later, Roderick received a letter. No return address, but the postmark was from Florida, a federal penitentiary. He opened it carefully. Rod, I know you're reading this. I know you orchestrated everything. Part of me is impressed. I never knew who I married. The CIA operative. The ghost. I want you to know I'm sorry. Not because I think it'll matter, or because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserve to hear it. I was greedy. I was selfish. I saw you as an obstacle instead of a person. And when Lance suggested we could be together if you were gone, I didn't see murder. I saw a solution. That makes me a monster. I see that now. You could have killed me. Part of me wishes you had. It would be easier than living with what I've done. But you chose something harder. You chose to make me face it. I hope you find peace, Rod. Real peace. Not the kind I pretended to give you, but the kind you deserve. Natasha. Roderick read it twice, then burned it. Her apology changed nothing. But it was an ending of sorts. He bought land in rural North Carolina. 5 acres, a small cabin, actual gardens he could tend. Not as cover this time, but because he genuinely enjoyed it. The work was meditative, honest. He didn't date, didn't look for another relationship. The betrayal had cut deep enough that he needed time, maybe years, maybe forever. That was okay. Some afternoons, he'd sit on his porch with coffee, watching the mountains in the distance. His phone would ring occasionally. Eugene checking in, or former colleagues calling about consulting work. He took some jobs, turned down others. Enough to stay sharp, but not enough to consume him. He was 49 years old. He'd lived 1,000 lives. Soldier, spy, assassin, gardener, ghost. And now, finally, he was just Rod. Just himself. In the quiet evenings, he sometimes thought about Natasha's final question in that warehouse. Rod, who are you really? He'd never answered. But the truth was simple. He was someone who'd chosen peace and been forced back into war. Someone who'd been betrayed, but refused to become bitter. Someone who believed in justice, even when mercy was easier. He was the man who'd been underestimated, dismissed, targeted. And he was the man who'd survived it all. Chapter 9, New Horizons. 3 years passed. Roderick's life in North Carolina settled into comfortable rhythms. He'd expanded his gardens, taken on consulting work for private security firms, and occasionally helped Eugene with cases that needed his particular expertise. The past became exactly that, past. Then, on a crisp October morning, Eugene called with unexpected news. You remember Christopher Mathis? Your old partner at the agency? Retired to Montana. He died last week. Heart attack. His daughter's having trouble with something, and she specifically asked if I knew anyone who could help. I thought of you. What kind of trouble? The kind that needs someone who's good at finding people who don't want to be found. Roderick sat back on his porch. I'm not sure I'm interested in. She's 17, Rod. Her mother disappeared 2 months ago. Police aren't helping. Christopher died worried sick about them both. The number of a grieving teenager who needed help. It was the kind of thing Roderick couldn't walk away from. Send me the details. He drove to Montana a week later. Christopher's daughter, Abby Mathis, was staying with neighbors, trying to keep up with school while her world fell apart. She had her father's sharp eyes and her mother's quiet strength. Mr. Haney, she said when they met. Dad told me stories about you. Said you were the best operative he ever met. Your father was being generous. He said if I ever needed help, real help, I should find you. They talked for 3 hours. Her mother, Rebecca Mathis, had been investigating a local land development company that was trying to force small ranchers off their property. She'd been a journalist, persistent and brave. Then she disappeared. The police said she probably ran off. Abby knew better. Can you help? She asked finally. Roderick looked at this girl who'd lost her father, and might lose her mother. Thought about broken systems, people who fell through cracks, the way power crushed the vulnerable. Thought about who he'd been, who he'd become, who he still was. Yes, he said, I can help. It took 2 weeks to find Rebecca Mathis. She was alive, being held at a remote property by enforcers working for the development company. A man named Ernest Benton who'd built a regional empire on intimidation and violence. Roderick didn't go through the FBI this time. Some situations required a different approach. He extracted Rebecca in the middle of the night, efficiently and quietly. The enforcers never knew what hit them. By dawn, Rebecca was in a hospital, Abby was crying with relief, and Ernest Benton was facing a reckoning he never saw coming. Roderick made sure the evidence of Benton's crimes, kidnapping, assault, illegal land seizure, reached the right authorities. Made sure the man would face justice. Then he disappeared before questions could be asked. Abby called him a month later. They arrested him. All of them. Mom's recovering. We're going to be okay. Good. Mr. Haney? Thank you. For everything. Your father would have done the same. He said you were retired. That you'd been through enough. I had been. What changed? Roderick smiled. I realized something. Being broken doesn't mean being finished. Sometimes the cracks are where the light comes in. That's beautiful. I can't take credit. I read it somewhere. They said goodbye. Roderick drove home through autumn mountains, thinking about redemption and purpose. About the man he'd been when Natasha had called him a broken old gardener. She'd meant it as an insult, a dismissal. But maybe being broken wasn't the weakness she'd thought. Maybe it just meant he'd been taken apart and put back together stronger. Rebuilt with purpose and clarity. His phone rang. Eugene, I heard about Montana. Nice work. Just helping out. You know, there's been talk. People asking questions about this mysterious guy who shows up, fixes impossible problems, disappears. Let them talk. I'm saying there might be more work. If you're interested, Roderick pulled over at a scenic overlook. The valley spread below him, touched by late afternoon gold. Somewhere out, there were people who needed help. Cases the system couldn't handle. Problems that required someone who understood both justice and strategy. Someone who'd been underestimated, dismissed, left for dead. Someone who'd survived and come back stronger. Send me the details, he said, because he wasn't just a broken old gardener anymore. He was something better, a man who'd found his purpose in the cracks. And his story was just beginning.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.